Welcome to Everything You Need to Know About the Ascension of Humanity, the podcast where ancient wisdom meets modern science and spiritual evolution gets real. I'm Heather, an energy healer, channel, and spiritual coach with Divine Ascension Company. Each week, we're diving deep into the mysteries of human consciousness, spiritual awakening, and the profound transformation happening within us and around us. But here's the thing. We're not doing this with our heads in the clouds. We're bringing neuroscience, psychology, quantum physics, and cutting-edge research to the table alongside meditation, energy work, and timeless spiritual teachings. Because the truth is, the ascension of humanity isn't some far-off cosmic event. It's happening right now in the choices we make, the awareness we cultivate, and the healing we do within ourselves. Whether you're curious about how mindfulness literally rewires your brain, why shadow work is backed by depth psychology, or what coherence between your heart and mind actually means scientifically, you're in the right place. We'll explore practices like breathwork, meditation, and emotional alchemy, not as abstract concepts, but as tangible tools grounded in both spiritual wisdom and scientific understanding. And here's where it gets even better. In our bonus episodes, you'll hear from real people sharing real stories. These are the warriors, the healers, the everyday seekers who've walked through their own darkness and found their light. They'll share their breakthroughs, their struggles, and the resources that actually helped them along the way. Because personal growth isn't a solo journey, and you deserve to know you're not alone. So whether you're just beginning to question the nature of reality, or you're deep in your spiritual practice, this podcast is your companion on the path. It's time to expand, to awaken, and to rise together. Let's begin. Welcome back, guys. We have our special guest today, Lisa, who has been on the show before. She was such a lovely, wonderful person to speak to. We had her come back. How are you doing today, Lisa?
Doing great. I'm so happy to be here with you again.
Awesome. So I just got back from Egypt. My brain's still a little scrambled, so bear with me today. I just got back from England. Crazy trip, lots of energies. It's been a wild ride. But you were there quite a while ago, but you've also been to Egypt. And I was just in Egypt in September, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit today about the sacred sites and how the energies are different and what the different experiences that you've had in these places. I know you said you were in England a little while ago, but is there anything that you remember and how you can kind of compare the two? What was your experience like?
Okay, yeah. So the last time I was in England was back in 2000, and that was my second time being there. First time was 1998. And before we jumped on, you had mentioned Stonehenge and it being smaller than than you thought it would be. And when I was there back in 2000, you couldn't go up to it like you probably still can't now. And I wasn't sure what to expect. And when I was in England, I had just finished my PhD. In fact, I was there with my father, who had won a trip from his insurance company. And so we were there with a bunch of insurance agents.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun.
We were wined and dined and we got all these excursions. And so as far as my experience with being in England that time around, I actually wasn't back deep in my spiritual nature yet. And so
Okay.
I do remember really being, it was great to be in that Stonehenge energy, but because I was part of this large tour group with very 3D insurance agent kind of people, very different experience than what I'm sure you experienced. But since then, I have been to many other sacred sites, including Egypt. I was there April of 2024 for 2.5 weeks. And then July of 2023, I was in Peru for 2 weeks. And both of those trips, I called them my ancient alien tours of Peru and Egypt. And then, I've been to Sedona and other places around the world as well. So wherever you want to go with that, let's go.
Well, first, let's start with, the we can exclude England since that was a different experience, but the other ones that you mentioned, because I've been to Egypt, Peru is on the list, so is Sedona. There's many other places. In fact, we were just talking about Glastonbury, England, which was the best kept secret of England. I had so much fun there. It was amazing. But I got this book and it was a Wiccan like guidebook for sacred sites, and it's this whole book of like hundreds of different sacred sites on ley lines, on what direction they work with, what element they work with, and different things to like experience and expect there and stuff like that. And I'm really fascinated. I can't wait to start reading it. But let's before we dive into each one, talk about the difference between them, the energy, the feel, the vibe. What was it like?
Yeah, very different. So Peru was very like calm and peaceful. And where we started in the Sacred Valley. So up outside of Cusco, 14,000 feet elevation in the Andes. And then at some point we dipped down to Machu Picchu, which is a little bit lower elevation. And then we hopped over to Lake Titicaca. And so being in those really beautiful, amazing places, just the megalithic structures
Hmm.
that I got to see. So in Peru, it was very interesting because I took all these photos. I understood, okay, these rocks are coming from quarries on other mountains. There's no way the log story of, oh yes, Peru is similar to Egypt, where the tour guides are required in a way to stick to a certain script about what the ancient history is. And so in Peru, the Incas 600 years ago supposedly, rolled these megaton granite stones perfectly, like laser cut edges, down the mountain and then up the mountain to create something like Ollantaytambo.
Oh yeah,
Or
sure. That sounds like a Saturday afternoon, right? Hmm.
right, exactly. And what was so fascinating is so that was our very first, that location was our very first site that we went to in Peru. And our guide, Al, he was explaining this whole log rolling thing, and I was calling bullshit. And now my husband, Skip, he was on the trip with me. We were with a group of 29 people, most of them spiritual. And I was, Al is explaining this, and I'm just like, no way. And so I just blurred out, what about the ancient aliens? And my husband, he got really mad at me because he thought I was being disrespectful.
Mm,
And I wasn't. I was serious about that. Like, the story that you're telling doesn't make any sense at all. Like, I'm a scientist. I'm a trained scientist. Engineering wise, no way.
right.
And so Al, our proving guide, he pulls me to the side and he's like, technically I'm not supposed to talk about these kind of things, but he's like, I fully agree with you. Yes, there was other technology, and I do think it was the ETs as well. And so what that did was that started this beautiful 2 week experience in Peru that wouldn't have happened otherwise in that way. Like talking about the ETs and these ancient civilizations, way more ancient than the Incas, if I hadn't spoken up.
Right.
And so my husband, he had to basically just be like, okay, yes, whatever. This is just. And that was our last trip before he passed away. And I know we didn't really get to that last time, and maybe we'll go there again, or go there this time. But that was part of the thing of like, I was really like getting deeper and deeper and deeper into receiving information from the other side and these higher dimensional beings, and really tapping into my memory of these ancient structures and how they were even built and all of that, because I have experienced a few lives very interesting where I got to see like the building of the pyramids in Egypt, for
Hmm.
instance. And I've been to different sacred sites in Mexico and really could feel that energy and had memories there. And so with Peru, it was creating a little bit more of an interesting wedge in our relationship. I mean, he was the love of my life, but because I was getting more and more and more deeper into this whole ET thing, and he was not, he was a little worried about me getting too deep.
Hmm.
So it was fascinating. So Peru, going to these different sites, was absolutely amazing. And our very final day in Peru, on the shores of Lake Titicaca, we went to what's called the Tridimensional Stargate.
Ooh.
And it is carved inside of like the sandstone or limestone kind of rock, perfectly like laser sharp edges that
Mhm.
they it would take special technology to be able to create that. You wouldn't just chip it out. And I stood inside of this Stargate, and I was just open to receiving whatever messages wanted to come. And the message that came very, very audibly in my head was that, that I was on the right track and that I needed to stop comparing myself to others who were on this track as well, that we all had our perfect timing
Hmm.
in what we were here to do, and that I was really here to hold the energy and be the bridge of humanity making this contact with the galactic beings and with the open contact that we are going to have within our lifetime.
Hmm.
And so I really needed to hear that message at that point. And then my experience of going to Egypt. So my husband had passed away, and I had the opportunity to go to Egypt with a small group of people. And Egypt energy, very, very different
Hmm.
than the calm Peruvian energy. And you probably will corroborate this.
Oh yeah.
Like Cairo, 20 million people in Cairo, and it's just 24/7 horns honking and the energy of that. So just the people alone, the energy is very different. And then, but then when we got outside of Cairo and going to the different sites, there were some sites that I really resonated with more than others.
Hmm.
And what was really cool for me is that um, the life that I remember during the time of the building of the pyramids, I wasn't human. I was one of the ETs. And so for me, this was my first human experience of walking among these, ancient structures, these megalithic pyramids and the temples, and seeing all of that from a human perspective, which was fascinating.
Yeah.
And with Egypt, it was like, okay, I feel complete. Like the only way that I would probably go back to Egypt is if I were to be invited by some group or some real specific reason to be there.
Hmm.
The energy for me was a little too intense. Where Peru, apparently, according to my astrocartography, which I just recently did, Peru is a very activating spot for me specifically and for my career. And so it's interesting, what you were talking about with the ley lines in that book, because I think that there is some really interesting energy with Peru, and maybe it is directly connected with Hawaii as well.
Hmm.
It's kind of a similar energy.
Yeah. When we're done with this podcast, remind me, there's been so much happening this week. It's been a whirlwind, but something you brought up a little bit ago, I want to talk to you about later, but I don't think the podcast is quite ready to hear this yet. But so don't let me forget because I will. But also, I think it's really interesting because something that you mentioned about being in Peru and asking about the ETs, like, so in Egypt, when we were talking to the tour guide, because they have to keep to that script, we were like,
Yeah.
why? Because we're like, "Oh, clearly this isn't how the pyramids were built. Like, there's just no way. It's not physically possible." And what we learned was that and they're starting to discover things under the pyramids and things like that. And I know that there's records underneath the Sphinx's paws that they haven't even talked about yet. I can't wait till those are found. But when I was in the king's chamber, I saw the story of how the pyramids were built in the limestone on the wall. And when I went back the second time, the limestone looked completely different, by the way. But I saw this whole story, and I've learned since then about sound and resonance, and that's how they lifted the stones up. And
Yeah.
also the ET factor, because I saw giant beings there holding a pyramid stone in their hand like it was a building block. And I was like, man, that's not a normal human size. That so, but they said that a lot of the Egyptians aren't ready to hear the history because of the trauma that's happened there, because of the being, invaded and now having to be Muslim and all the things that are going on there, and they're not ready to hear this history yet. Where Peru, was it kind of the same thing? Like, why are they sticking to that script? Obviously, your group, your tour guide agreed with you. So, is there a specific reason why they're not talking about it more?
I I didn't quite understand why Peru was so close-lipped, because a lot of the other, Central American and South American countries are more open to the idea that the ETs are real. But it's such a part of their culture that the Incans were the ones who built this, but the Incans, were so modern comparatively. And when you see structures like Machu Picchu, where the base blocks of the structures are these megalithic, perfectly lasered stones, like we see in Egypt. And then as the stones, like newer and newer technology was getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And so you've got the base of the giant stones, and then you've got the little stones on top that are just cobbled together,
Hmm.
where, and you got to see this, where you can't even put a piece of paper in between these stones in
Right.
Egypt.
Hmm.
And so same in Peru, and what you just talked about with that sound resonance. So that's exactly. So it was probably, I think it was back in 2021. I had a QHHT session done on me. And one of the lives in that session that I got to experience was this time of the building of the pyramids. And so what I got to fully see, to watch this play out, was, so I was an ET in the spaceship. Our job, my team's job, was we were genetic engineers. We were meant to send sound frequency down to the Earth humans to upgrade their DNA so that they could hold more consciousness and run more energy through their bodies. And then we had others of us, boots on the ground, teaching the humans how then to do the sound thought levitation process to lift these megalithic stones and put them into place.
Hmm.
And so our modern day science, we do have the ability to make very dense, everything is mostly empty space. And we just appear dense and physical because we are vibrating at a lower vibrational state. But we have the science to increase the frequency of those molecules to essentially make them light as a feather. And so they've done experiments. Now, have they done it with megalithic stones in this modern time? Probably not, but who knows?
Well, I mean, you got to start somewhere. At least the research is being done, right?
Yes, exactly, exactly. And so, yeah, so with Egypt, it is, I think, a lot of it to do with the religion of that we can't go back more than 6,000 years ago that the earth was formed. And even the way that the hieroglyphs and some of these temples, essentially they were there before the pharaohs came in and essentially graffitied their names on them to claim them.
Hmm.
And so, uh, yeah, so there's so many reasons why they're sticking to the traditional stories. And also I call it like a mafia, because if they come out and say, oh yeah, this is way more ancient than we've said, they don't want to be wrong. They
Right.
don't want to look like, they were stupid.
Hmm.
But to those of us who get to experience it and can think outside the box, we are thinking, there's a lot of ignorance going on here
Yeah.
without judging
Right.
as much, cannot judge.
No, of course not. And I mean, I understand why they did it. I'm just ready for that next step to be like, okay, the government's admitted that ETs are real. Next step, okay, we had some help building the pyramids. Like, it's fine. You all knew it already. Like, it's okay.
Right.
But yeah, and the story about your QHHT session and the resonance and the thought and all of that, like I'm hearing more and more stories of people who are experiencing similar lifetimes. So it's not like, because there's people who disagree. Okay, you're entitled to your opinion. We all are. That's fine. Um, but to hear so many stories that are so similar from different sources and people who don't know each other, or even half of them don't even know about Egypt at all. It was just something that came up. It's just interesting to put all those pieces together and be like, yeah, that kind of gives a little bit of validation to all of the conspiracy theories and the like, well, that's not physically possible. So yeah, I'm really enjoying hearing the stories and hearing people's experiences with these kind of past life realizations and how they all kind of fit together. It's fascinating.
Yeah, well, and for me, because it's part of what I share about on my UFO tours in terms of this super ancient history and how, again, I'm a trained evolutionary biologist, but I don't believe our evolution story that I
Mhm.
used to have to teach to my students. And so even with our human evolution, all these missing links and understanding that those are the places where different ET races came and modified us. They upgraded our body, they changed us genetically. And so getting to not only experience the sound thought levitation, but then also that genetic mutation that we were helping with was really incredible for me. It validated what I actually kind of intuitively knew and was sharing.
Hmm.
And so it was some extra proof. But what's also really interesting that I got to see in that specific lifetime was that we had another experiment going on a different planet with humanoid kind of beings where on Earth, there were, again, we were actively boots on ground teaching the humans how to use this technology. Where on the other planet, we were upgrading their DNA, but we were hands off. We were not giving them technology. We were not teaching them anything. And looking at the culture side by side, what was fascinating was that the one that we left alone, that we just upgraded them, they stayed in perfect harmony with their environment. Their spirituality kept growing and growing and growing. They didn't have the same kind of technology, but they didn't need it. And so if you think the culture of Avatar, the Avatar movies, that was very much like this other planet and how they were operating within their environment, where here on Earth, giving the humans the technology, ultimately what that did was it created power struggles. And
Hmm.
again, this is way before Egypt as we know it. And it might, maybe it was part of Atlantis or,
Hmm.
something in that region. It doesn't matter what the name of it was, but it was super ancient. And what happened was the technology outgrew the spirituality
Hmm.
and the downfall of civilization again.
Yep. Yep. But that's not going to happen this time.
Uh, supposedly not. And I'm on
It can
team.
happen.
No, it's not. I'm on team. We're awakening and evolving.
Well, one can hope, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's what a wild ride. So yeah, what what about Sedona? How did Sedona differ from the other two places?
Okay. So for me, my very first Sedona experience was actually back in 2018. I really like I was called to go there, and so I decided to take the family for spring break. Well, little did I know that that almost altered the course of whether Skip and I were going to get married or not.
Uh,
Because the energy of Sedona for some people is very, very intense. It's like vortex portal energy and it stirs stuff up. And I've heard from other sources that the natives, they didn't actually ever live directly in the Sedona energy. They lived on the outskirts. They would just go there for their spiritual ceremonies. But because it has this intense kind of energy, and now, so I took the family and it did stir stuff up, stuff that needed to be addressed, though. So, whatever comes up, it's always for the highest good, I believe.
mhm.
But that was actually then also the first time that I ever went on a UFO tour. Like, I had had experiences my whole life. But this was the first time that I knew, okay, there's a tour. Really? Okay, I'm going to sign us up for this. And that's how I learned how to identify the moving objects in the sky, actually. And we saw some really amazing stuff. And we also, that was the first time I got to use the Gen 3 military night vision goggles. So Skip and I, we almost broke up on the trip. We barely got out of it.
Wow.
And then we came out of that and it was fine. But when we moved here to Hawaii, to the Big Island specifically, I was like, oh, yeah, Big Island, very similar to Sedona.
Hmm.
It's very transmutative, like it stirs stuff up. And some people can hang in that energy and other people can't. And so, there's a saying on the island, like she calls you in or she'll spit you out.
Yeah. Wow.
And the energy of the other islands, Maui, Oahu, Kauai, they're all very different than the Big Island energy. And so it is, we almost moved to Sedona. We were looking at Sedona and we decided to move here. Number one, I wanted the ocean, and Sedona, it's gorgeous, but it doesn't have the ocean. So,
Right.
um, yeah, so that was kind of my experience is that, but I am one who I am built in my energy, in my astrology, in my human design, all of it, to be able to hang with really mutable, transmutative energy.
Hmm.
I have a lot of fire, a lot of air and fire in my chart. And so I can handle that. And I actually thrive in that energy where not everyone can.
Same. All of my signs are fire. Every
Okay.
single one.
Wow.
It explains a lot, but yes. Wow.
Yeah. So when just thinking about all these different places, and then, okay, so Bali, the energy of that is totally different than these other places too. Like it's this calm, peaceful, even though it's got an active volcano on it, it doesn't have the same kind of really like shaking stuff up kind of energy that our island has with the active volcano.
Hmm.
So even with volcanic activity doesn't mean it's always going to be so like churning.
Wow. So you mentioned earlier about your astrocartography chart. How was that experience? I've been thinking about doing it. I haven't done it yet, but I keep seeing it pop up in my purview. What was your experience with that?
Well, oh, so we did this on Thanksgiving. I went over to one of my besties, Alyssa's house for Thanksgiving, and she was talking about hers, and that um, Arizona was one of her hot spots and Hawaii, but Arizona was really strong for her. And I'm like, well, let's do mine. And so using Chat GPT, she has hers trained really well. So she just typed in that and pulled stuff up for me. And when I say I was called to Hawaii and I didn't know why I had to move here, well, it's in my astrocartography,
Wow.
actually. Hawaii is it's like the number one place in the world for all the different aspects of my life, relationships, career, money, like all the things, health.
Hmm.
And now there are other spots that came up where it would be a good idea for me to travel there because it would enhance career or business. And one of those was Peru. This a strong second location for my astrocartography happened to be Sedona. So when I say like I can really hang with this energy,
Hmm.
I'm built for it.
Yeah.
And um, other places that were really strong were like central and south coastal California.
Okay.
Being on the coast for me is really good. Like I need that balance of the water energy.
Hmm.
And another interesting one was Sydney, Australia. And my whole life, like I've been obsessed with Australia.
Me
So
too. Hmm.
yeah, so it's interesting how all of that can play a part in terms of where we're drawn to even go visit or where we want to live in the world. And even though I grew up in Washington State, which is where you are now, when that was home, it felt like home for so long, it actually does not support me in my fullest being at all.
Well, you've got me sold. I'm going to be doing mine tonight.
Okay. I can't wait
I've
to
been
hear
thinking about it. I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going to do it and just see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was your favorite sacred site that you've been to and why?
Oh, that is a really good question. What one of the ones in Egypt, because there are so many that I've been to. So, like when I do tourism, I do two different things. One is ecotourism, where I need to go experience all the animals out in the wild.
Hmm.
The other is to see these really ancient sites, to these sacred sites. And so when I was in Egypt, for me, I think the most powerful site that I was like, okay, wow, I'm getting information. I'm feeling really compelled that this is a great place was the Sarcophagus at Saqqara. So
Okay.
did you go down there?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And so for the listeners who don't know what that is, so it's this underground cavern with these hallways, with these rooms off of these hallways, and it's all underground with these massive granite boxes that have been carved with these lids, and each stone is 60 to 70 tons each.
Hmm.
And I mean, these boxes are so massive. It's like, okay, yeah, what was the purpose? So my friend Kate, who I was on the trip with, she's very much like me. She's very tuned in with her ET guides and family. And so we were independently getting information about what those boxes were actually for, because the traditional Egyptology story is that they were tombs for bulls, for boy cows.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes
Oh,
no sense
no,
whatsoever. There's no
no.
evidence of it either. No
No.
evidence.
Yeah, that was a really powerful place for me too. And I'll ask you more questions and share. But on the sign outside, it even said because there was a cult there that worshiped the bulls for the bull god, and that might have been true. They also said that it was a necropolis for like the cats and these different pets. And I'm like, because when I first walked in there, I kept hearing things, and I was like, it's very like I do when I go to cemeteries. I was like, it's very noisy in here, and I was like. At first, I thought it was the animals because I'm very in tune with animals, but then I was like, no, this is something completely different. So I'm curious what you guys got about the boxes. What did you think?
Okay, so and again, we were tuning in independently, and then we convened after to be like, okay, what'd you get? What'd you get? And so what I got like right away was that these were sort of like rejuvenation chambers
Hmm.
for the big ETs. For because as an ET coming from a different location Earth is very dense, very hard to be here for especially higher dimensional ETs. And so what I was getting was that this was a place for them to go take their physical avatar, their costume, to go put it in these rejuvenation tanks,
Oh,
to make it easier to be here on Earth. And what was interesting is that when we were in Alexandria, we went inside the catacombs there, and they also had these boxes with lids. They were not as massive, they were more human size. And it was like those were rejuvenation tanks for the humans.
hmm.
So what did you get?
Well, we went to the Osiris shaft. Did you go down there?
Yes.
Okay, because they had a box similar to that down there as well, but it
Yeah.
was more human size. But so when we were in there, we were getting that whole place like and I was starting to remember from my Egyptian lifetimes too, but those like where you would reach a dead end, like those were portals. That was like it was like an airport, an ET airport basically, where people, energies, beings would come in. But for the boxes, we got that, and this might have been also true, maybe, I don't know, but that the ETs would store their technology and their tools in those boxes because they were safe in there. They
Right.
couldn't be affected by vibration or, nobody's lifting that freaking giant lid, you know what I mean? But
Right.
they would keep their tools and their technology in there so people wouldn't find them. And I know that they built a military base very close by to kind of keep an eye on what was going on in this underground bunker essentially. And it's, I don't know, it's interesting to hear people's stories. That was a very energetic place for us too. I was starting to remember quite a bit about being there in a past life. And
Okay.
yeah, there was no dead animals, I'll tell you that. But
No. No.
but
Well,
yeah, it was interesting.
and when even like modern technology, we can't even get those boxes out of there.
Mhm.
You saw the
Mhm.
one that was stuck in the hallway
Yeah.
that the scientists tried to get one of these out to take to one of the museums, and they couldn't even get it out. So they have no idea how they got them in there.
Right.
And again, Quarry is 600 miles away,
Right.
600 miles. So it's, yeah. The other thing that was interesting is we took a couple photos of the one that was stuck in the hallway, and there was this purple aura around it, this energy field.
Wow.
And one of the photos that we took of the Great Pyramid, on some of the up close stones, that purple energy was there as well. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Hmm. There was a gal on our trip who got connected with some of her galactic guides who were blue avians, and she got the same thing, but with a blue orb and blue. And I think she received a message from them while we were at this location as well. And that was when she kind of first discovered who this was because they came and we did this whole meditation and while we were down there and they came and they were talking to her and but she kept experiencing that blue kind of orb and aura around her and in photos while we were there, so that's interesting. I wonder what it was. Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a lot of things.
Yes,
Orbs
for sure.
can be a lot of things. They can
Yeah.
be past loved ones,
Hmm.
spirits, yeah, spirit guides. They can be ETs,
Hmm.
spacecraft,
Yeah,
all the
literally
things.
anything.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, so do you have anything else that you would like to share about these places and the energies and stuff and your experience?
I what I would just say, if anyone is called to a place, like to go visit, trust that calling, trust that knowingness, because that is a way for us to remember who we really are and that we are more than just this one earth life, and that there are other realities that exist besides what our textbooks and the so-called scientists tell us. And we need to start trusting our inner knowingness more. I was talking with a friend the other night, and one of the places that besides Mount Shasta, which you and I were talking about last time, that I'm really being called to go to this year. So whenever that happens. But another place that I really am compelled to go to that I didn't get to go to when I went to Australia the first time is Uluru. And that's my namesake. I am Arcturian Uluru. And so for me, that particular sacred site is just like my energy is being pulled there.
Yeah.
So I got to figure out how I'm going to get to Australia now. Because my next trip is Scotland and Ireland for 2 weeks, and that's in June. That's already
Awesome.
planned. But
I want to
um,
go to Ireland over Halloween because they do that whole festival and there's a lot of fairies and things involved. So I want to experience that at some point in my life.
yeah. And so there's so many amazing sites around the world that there's way more to it than what we've been told.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I'm still all for going to Mount Shasta this year. It's been calling me for a while now, for like 2 or 3 years. I've visited in meditation. They know I'm coming. Like I'm ready. I can't wait. That's probably the next place that I'll end up going because that one's calling to me the most. But there's definitely a long list. And now that I have that book, I'm sure it's going to get even longer.
I know you're gonna have to send me little snippets of the book. I'm super interested in that.
Heck yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show again. Oh, I had one other question. I forgot I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
One last question. You were talking about your UFO sighting experiences in Sedona with your family. How did your
Mhm.
family take it, seeing all these things in the sky?
Well, so what's nice is number one, Skip was already a believer in UFOs. Now, the spiritual side of the ETs, not so much, but he had experienced a massive UFO over the Tacoma Dome. He lived
Wow.
across the street of I-5 across from the Tacoma Dome up on the hill. And one night in the middle of the night, he wakes up and he had a skylight in his bedroom. He was married to his first wife at the time, and there's this massive spaceship he can see. And so he wakes her up, they go downstairs, go outside, and then at that point the spaceship was above the Tacoma Dome, and it was rectangle shape, no lights, completely still, no noise. And it stayed there for a few minutes and then it just zipped off like super
Wow.
fast. So he already, when I met him, I'm like, okay, number one, this is your test. You have to believe in things like ghosts and spaceships and Sasquatch.
Hmm.
So that house that he lived in Tacoma was actually a haunted house, and they
Wow.
knew who the ghost was. They knew who the lady was. Whole different story with that. But and then he experienced the UFO. He did believe in Squatch. So when I took him, he was like, cool. Yes, this is really cool. My kids, they were um, maybe a little too young to appreciate it. But even before we got the goggles out, my son, and I'm trying to remember like how old they were at this time, because again, 2018, how many years ago was that? Almost 8 years. So like
Mhm.
maybe they were 11 and 9. And
Okay.
so my son, let's say he was 9. So my son and I and a couple of the other people on the tour, out in the distance from the ledge we were on, we could see this orange orb, this energy orb. Definitely, it was some kind of craft.
Hmm.
And no denying it. And then with the goggles, then we were seeing some of the really, really cool activity that we get to see here in Hawaii. So my kids, they were like, okay, yeah, whatever. And for Skip and me, what it did was it planted the seed for starting the tour here in Hawaii when we moved here. And
Hmm.
so because we had done that tour, Skip at the time when we started the tour, he was fully on board. Now he wanted me to stay in terms of my education, more like government disclosure and just 3D science, which that's not what I'm here to do. So that became the later issue, but it was definitely the seed that got planted for my tour here.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, at least they were receptive enough, at least.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm sure I'm going to have you on again because we just uncovered a whole bunch of other things that we can talk about for hours, I'm sure. So thank
Yes.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night. Thanks for being here with me today. I want to tell you about something I'm really excited about. I'm leading a pilgrimage to Egypt in September 2026. We'll be visiting some of the most powerful sacred sites on the planet, doing activation work on location, and connecting with the ancient wisdom that's been held in those spaces for thousands of years. If Egypt has been calling you, if you felt that pull and wondered what it means, I'd love for you to seriously consider this. All the details are in the show notes. And if you want to experience a taste of Egypt's energy right now, we have channeled recordings from our September 2025 trip, the Song of Hathor, messages from the elders, transmissions from the sacred sites themselves. Those are on our YouTube channel, link in the show notes. I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, trust what you know.